We've seen a really nice move within the crypto markets. The question is, can bulls continue this trajectory and push through that $88,000 level with haste, right? We need to see a powerful move through that level to be convinced that the bulls are actually taking control. And remember, the overhead targets that we outlined weeks ago was $92,000 and $95,000. So will we see bulls take the reins and push price into that level? We'll discuss that in today's show. Or could this be a massive bull trap, right? That's also something we have to entertain, since there is some big deviations, right? What is the deviation? Well, one of the deviations is, if you have a look at the fear and greed index for the S&P 500, that being the stock market, well, you're sitting at 22, right? Extreme fear. What happens if you look at crypto? Well, the fear and greed index over there has spiked all the way up to 47, now sitting in that neutral territory, which is pretty interesting, right? The big deviations that have taken place over there. And if we look at gold, again, continuing to pump over here. And the last time that we saw that was actually 1980, where interest rates peaked at about 18%. So seeing some scary things happening within the gold market. And I think now a lot of the crypto people are starting to try and, talk up the narrative of, is crypto catching up to gold? That's something that we also spoke about. A very interesting environment indeed. Now, yesterday we saw Bitcoin almost pumped straight through that $88,000 level, and then it stalled it temporarily. And part of the reason why was the stock market started to pull back, right? I think we have Tesla earnings coming out very soon. If not today, then it's tomorrow. And Tesla's flirting with those lows, right? So if Tesla has bad earnings, which we expect is very possible, given the at least supply chain shock around all the tariffs, other countries maybe are not ordering as much. We'll see what happens over there, if there is going to be any sort of a negative return on the expected earnings. And if so, you'd expect this is going to continue towards the downside. So putting in lower lows and lower highs. We can have a look at the S&P 500 attempting to now hold up. We did say that this was range bound, so we're not getting overly bearish on this or overly bullish. As long as it's between these two levels, the S&P 500 remains range bound. The problem over here, though, is if you do consolidate underneath key levels. What is one of the key levels? Well, the 200 moving average, it kicks in the bots and algos to start to short sell as price continues to consolidate and those moving averages and EMAs start to roll over. This is how a lot of those trend trading bots work. And that is something that we do have to consider, right? Which means probably actually it's better if you could see a V-shaped recovery for the bulls over here versus simply consolidating. I think that increases the likelihood that you might actually just roll through some of these key support levels. So crypto and the stock market doing something very different. There's QQQ, also very similar to the S&P 500. We can have a look at NVIDIA. NVIDIA also coming back almost to test those lows, but not quite. MicroStrategy has actually held up pretty well. I think a lot of this has got to do with the fact that Saylor keeps buying, right? So that brings optimism into the market. And that's possibly one of the reasons we've seen this deviation between crypto and the stock market, whereas crypto has held up much better, relatively speaking, right? Look at Bitcoin against the S&P 500 or the SPY over here. It's higher highs and higher lows measured as a ratio against each other on a weekly scale. Crypto is still holding up, or Bitcoin, I should say, is still holding up. We're seeing Bitcoin dominance fly as well. We'll talk about that in just a moment. So is this only because of Saylor? I don't know. You guys let me know in the comments. What do you guys think? It's all speculation at that point. But a lot of the liquidity levels that you would typically look for to get swept have been front run. And a lot of that, I think, is due to Saylor buying. So very interesting. Let me know in the poll section. If you go through to the poll, you can actually vote over there. What comes first? I'd love to know your thoughts. $72,000 Bitcoin or $100,000 Bitcoin. The audience today is very split. Look at that. It's almost 50-50, right? About 55% of you still looking for 72,000 before 100,000. So I can easily see if price starts to get back above $95,000, you're going to see again the fear and greed index really starting to build in favor of the bulls taking control over here, and you'll see some greed coming back aggressively. So we're seeing a big drop in the DXY Remember, the DXY is fast approaching that multi-decade trend. In actual fact, it's only about 3% away before hitting that level. And I would be careful when it does get into that level. So I think that most of the trades that you take need to be short-term thinking, at least where you're just trading it in the short term. Level to level, we spoke about it, that $80,000 to $83,000 level, looking for the longs up to 92 to 95. And then we simply just go a little bit more risk off, especially if the DXY is coming into this key level and does actually decide to put in a bit of a bounce. As for the USDT dominance, this would essentially be the trade setup over here. You know, it's broken down this key level, and I would say as long as it doesn't get back above 5.56%, the bears are in control of the USDT dominance, meaning USDT dominance floats down. Crypto has the ability to float up at least until the next level. Remember, to level. So the breakdown to the next major support over here. That means from there to there, you're essentially looking for risk on plays or long opportunities in the short term for crypto, but it needs to break through some key levels, right? And we'll talk about that. So if you have a look at the liquidation levels, which we drop over here, of course, from High Block Capital in the Whale Room Discord, these are the deltas. Bitcoin, very positive. But look at that. ETH, negative, right? We're going to talk about ETH as well. The timeline on X is becoming really bearish around ETH right now. YouTube as well. You see Solana slightly positive over there. Pepe slightly positive. WIF slightly positive. And NEAR also slightly positive. So out of all of these, you know, which is the one that sticks out like a sore thumb? It's ETH. ETH over there, negative funding. And this is what the ETH BTC chart looks like, right? Coming straight into that key level. It is on a TD sequential 9 buy. This shows trend exhaustion with a parabola, inverse parabola, at least going towards the downside. So you're looking for a 1 to 4 candle reversal over here. And things are getting very, very interesting. It's getting interesting because if ETH does actually find a bottom in this monthly order block over here, that will catch a lot of people off guard because you can see where the sentiment lies, right? And where people are betting with their pockets, right? Shorting ETH even after such a massive downturn. Now, if ETH does lose this level, fair enough, it could come a lot lower. So we've been tracking this in a little bit more of a granular fashion, looking at the weekly scale. And this has been the next level of interest. Again, I'm not by any means saying that the yellow line will be the exact bottom, but I'm expecting to sweep the yellow line. And yeah, I mean, we could see another week or two of downside over here. We got about another 9 to 10% from current levels. Previously, when we first started looking at this, it was 15 to 20% further downside that we needed to see in order to sweep that level. So that's what we're focusing on over here when it comes to the ETH BTC ratio. Look, to hit the yellow line, you only got about 7.45%, but I'm expecting this is probably going to sweep through that level. And then we need to see a bit of support found, a wick reversal, and then possibly you can start to threaten to break this inverse parabola. Remember, parabolas, when they break, lead to pretty explosive moves in the opposite direction. So if this does break, then you could see some big moves in the opposite direction. And Bitcoin dominance is fast approaching the next major target, which is 66 to 69% Bitcoin dominance as a percentage. Where does that leave that? Let's quickly see. From current levels, it's now breaching that yellow line, which was a key pivot level. Also probably an important point to focus on, given the weekly close. We'll show you in a moment, right? But you're looking at about 2.6% to hit that 0.786 fib level. That's at a 66% Bitcoin dominance price. So 2.6% upside move. And if you overextend that, how bad could it get? Well, for the altcoins, at least 8%, right? If you move all the way to the 0.886. So Bitcoin dominance on an absolute ripper over here. We're looking at this pivot level that's been downtrending over there. So coming into a very, very, very key zone right here, right now on the weekly scale. If you get a bit of a swing failure pattern over here, that could also be really, really telling. And a lot of the puzzle pieces are coming together, right? We know that Trump wants to fire Jerome Powell and bring someone else in that's relatively crypto friendly. If that does happen, who knows? Maybe we start to see a rejection on Bitcoin dominance. But as it stands right now, altcoins have been heavily hit, despite the fact that many people probably have small emotional bits of FOMO that are coming in, given the little bit of moves and they might be offside. Relatively speaking, the altcoins are still heavily knocked with pretty much everything between oversold and weak, right? A couple of the coins moving into the neutral territory, but for the most part, altcoins have been smashed. And when you go to the altcoin season index over here, well, you can see it sitting at 22 in terms of Bitcoin season, which means basically almost no coins have outperformed Bitcoin which is why the Bitcoin dominance looks like that, right? So still early days. If the bull market were still on and we were going to continue to whatever price targets your favorite influencer is giving you, 130,000, 180,000, 200,000, some of you 400,000, well, it's still very early, right? So I don't think that there's any rush over here, right? We see the 24-hour liquidation still relatively low. And after yesterday, Shah refreshed this and it went down to create new lows on the daily exchange volume. Low volume environments when you're getting pumps are usually a little bit of a warning sign. And I guess that's where you could see a bit of a bull trap and you have to be relatively careful. If the volume doesn't start to pick up on the exchanges, then where's the bid actually coming from, right? Yes, maybe 𝗪𝗂𝗎𝗪, that's what's creating at least the pump within Bitcoin, but what about the rest of the coins and altcoins? So we looked at this as a setup yesterday, multiple candle closes above this downsloping trend line, and we still want to reclaim that 88,744. And you can see the significance of that level as price pushed into it, wicked into it, and rejected yesterday. Already today, it's wicked into it and rejected again today. So I do think that you'll sweep over this level, and then later on, you may come back down. I think the general bias, for the rest of the month would be that you're looking for long opportunities towards the end of April. And then I think that you may have a small sell-in, may go away narrative that picks up a little bit, but it could lead into a higher low. And then you're going to be looking at those inverse head and shoulders, which we've been speaking about, right? Left shoulder, head, and somewhere around there, you're going to be putting in your right shoulder. But in the short term, yes, you can be looking for still for some long trade opportunities, right? So liquidity is still stronger overhead, almost $30 million worth of liquidity at $89,000. And if we go to Bitcoin over here, RSI looking really good on the daily, still strong, but coming into what is essentially mid-range resistance. Now, if we treat the yellow line as range low, the middle one is mid-range, and then the top over here as range high, and that's been perfectly measured out with the fibs, then yes, this is a resistance area, so you'd need to see a couple of candle closes above that mid-range in order to open up the possibility of trading back towards those highs, right? I personally wouldn't want to entertain that yet. We need to take it one step at a time, and I'd probably only entertain that anyway after putting in a high low. So it would have to look something like this, put in a high low, and if you can maintain above that, now we can talk about the next move up, maybe challenging those highs, right? What I think is less likely is this, right? I think that's much, much less likely, especially considering the divergence between crypto and the stock market. Stock market still sitting there in extreme fear, right? So let's continue. We'll have a look at a couple of the altcoins as well. So here we got Bitcoin, right? We've essentially swept the Monday high, and I think that's where a lot of the traders stop losses are coming in. Some of the savvy short traders quickly trying to hedge, put in short trades on the swing failure over there, and stops are hanging slightly above. So that could be liquidity for the taking. Sometimes we do see stronger pushes, right? You could still do something like this. But if you start to break and hold underneath the Monday range, the last couple of weeks, the Monday range trade has really been good, right? What the Monday range trade suggests is you have to look at your various different coins. But generally speaking, when you sweep the Monday high and you deviate back into the range, that opens up a short trade with your stop hanging above the swing failure pattern, wherever that may be. And you trigger your trade on the reclaim of the Monday range, so breaking back under the Monday high, and then you're ultimately trading that back to the Monday low. Now, this would also be where you look for the long trades, right? So if you do see that deviation take place, I'm not necessarily suggesting that you need to short strength when bulls are starting to take control. That could be asking for trouble. But if you do see a deeper move back down into the Monday low around this 85K region, that opens up another opportunity. Deviate that Monday low, so break below, reclaim it. That definitely opens up the long trade, and you can trade that back to the highs and possibly even beyond until $92,000, which is situated up here, right? Another favorable trade. This is, of course, we were dropping this in the same idea a couple of days ago, right? If you go through to my section over here, I am updating, especially with the volatility, I'm updating everyone all the time over here within the market. But this is what we're looking at a couple of days ago, right? Last week. This was last week. On which day did I drop this on here specifically? That was on whatever the 16th was. What was the 16th? Let's quickly see over here. The 16th was on Wednesday. So if you look over here, 16th was on Wednesday. On Wednesday, we dropped that same idea. The reclaim of the Monday low started to open up the long trade opportunity. And now it'd be saying the same thing, right? If you sweep down, lose the Monday low, and then you can start to reclaim that, that will start to look good for another long trade. And then you trade it up to 92. Now, I can't say with certainty that you're going to get that. Of course, there's a possibility that, you do just continue to squeeze, consolidate, and continue the journey towards the upside, which is why we did mention this already over a week ago. But I know there will be people that maybe haven't participated in that. That's generally the consensus. 92 to 95K is going to be major resistance for Bitcoin. And you'll probably find the same setups across the board, right? Here's ETH. Let's have a look at quickly where ETH is. So ETH actually perfectly, look at that wick. Absolutely beautiful. Let me see, did I draw this really well? ETH absolutely perfectly wicking straight back into that key level over there. You know, if you are long on ETH over here, I guess this is a very obvious stop loss below that. This candle over here, which came in at a low at 1539. So hard stop under 1539, maybe leave it a tick or two below just to be safe. You have a little bit of an inefficiency candle here in the form of the wick. I often like to target about 50% of the way to there. So if you do get Bitcoin pulling back ever so slightly, you might see ETH do something like this, and that will give another re-entry opportunity on a long, right? Re-entry on the long, reclaim the Monday low, stop loss goes over here, taking the long trade over there, trade it up to the Monday high. If it can break and hold the Monday high, then it should squeeze up to like around 1800, right? So some nice things to look at. Remember, the bias for then would be for the rest of the month. Long trades looking to squeeze into higher prices, possibly towards yearly opens on most coins. This has been the same messaging for 2 weeks now. And then ultimately, we come into another bear moon, right? At end of the month, we're looking for the bear moon to cause a bit of chaos, break price down into May, and then create a macro high low, which would print inverse head and shoulders across the board, right? So as I just showed you on Bitcoin over here, if that does play out like that, now, of course, we're trying to play 4D chess over here. I'm not necessarily saying I'm going to win this time, but essentially, we're looking at the left shoulder, the head, and then obviously if price does squeeze up over here and come back down with that bear moon, that's your right shoulder, and that's basically the game plan, right? We also are seeing a little bit of volume come in, right? But this was yesterday, which was a public holiday in many parts of the world, so I'm more interested to see, now how the rest of the week plays out. So it's looking good, though. It's looking good in terms of playing out the plans. Let's have a look at a couple of the other coins over here, just in terms of their Monday ranges. So we can quickly go to Solana. Let's see if Solana swept the highs or lows yet. Just let that load up over there. Okay, so you've printed the Monday range. Neither level has been swept yet. You're looking to trade in the opposite direction following the first sweep. So we need to first see it's in the middle of no man's land right now. Not much to comment there. And we can have a look as well at 𝗪𝗏. Let's quickly let 𝗪𝗏 load up. This has been one of the trades that we had been looking at for quite some time based on all those MACD things, etc., for possible squeeze. So also printed the Monday high, Monday low. Hasn't swept either side yet, right? So I'll give it a bit of time. Basically, we need to give everything a bit more time to play out. And when you do get that pullback, if you see Bitcoin sweeping the Monday low and you start to print negative funding, remember we've been looking at this since the bias in the short term, this negative funding over here in red, negative funding with a drop in open interest, that would be a good sign. So if price comes down, I know it's a little bit blurry on the screen up there. Price comes down into that 85K region. Funding goes negative over here. Open interest drops off. That's where you start to look for that trade opportunity over there. All right, I will update you guys, by the way. I've been updating everyone with voice notes all the time throughout yesterday, just looking at every single thing, because it's obviously a challenging time within the market to pick a side with the volatility. But why? Because there's so many moving parts, right? The dollar is breaking down. The stock market is pulling back. Bitcoin is holding up. It's a strange environment. Gold is pumping. We correlated more to equities, which is where the confusion comes in, right? That's what's throwing everyone a curveball, because you have to ask yourself the question, is this really the moment that Bitcoin is decorrelating from the stock market? And that's what's making it so challenging for a lot of, call it veterans, to position, the OGs of the space, to position themselves in a conviction trade, right? I think that if Bitcoin came down originally with the stock market, that would have put Bitcoin down into the 60s to high 60s, low 70s. That would have been a much easier trade to take with conviction, but it didn't happen. So I think a lot of people are caught off guard. If you're an OG in the space or a veteran, let me know in the comments. I'll read the comments after the show as well. Let me know in the comments, what do you think? What do you think about that? Are you positioning with conviction despite the decorrelation to the stock market in the very short term? Because naturally you would think that it would recorrelate to the stock market, right? In over time, right? Over time, crypto is completely correlated to the NASDAQ, which means you have to take short-term decorrelations with a very small pinch of salt. You have to be really careful. All right. We can have a look at a couple of the other coins. By the way, guys, I do want to let you know as well that if you are new to trading, you can actually get yourself a free $50. It's limited to the first 200 people. This is a partnership with Femex. If you just sign up using the specific link in the description below, that for the first 200 people will give you $50 for free. And then after that, you get 20% rebate based on how much you deposit. So, and then if you're a whale, you can save a lot on fees, right? This is what it looks like. Here's your fee savings. Basically, if you become a star VIP, you're saving about $85,000, massive amounts of money on trading fees. So they are trying to incentivize you. The more you trade with, the less you pay, but you have to actually apply for that. So step one, you need to sign up to Femex using that link, get your 20% cash back bonus over there, and your $50 for free if you're in the first 200 people to do that. And then you can come here and apply for the VIP fees thereafter. So we can go into some of the, other things that you want to have a look at. We can have a look at Fartcoin. Is Fartcoin still holding up? That should be an interesting one to look at. So Fartcoin, all right, here we have it. Let's quickly check it out, see what it's doing. So Fartcoin, very, very, very strong. Pumped above all these key levels. Let's have a look at it on the daily time frame. Maybe everything's holding up over here. If the market's going to continue to squeeze, Fartcoin's going to run it, right? I obviously wouldn't long it over here. You need to wait for a bit more of a pullback. If you saw something like that again, same story, right? Sweep the Monday low. That's where you start to look for the long trade deviation back above. And where can you trade this? We spoke about it before, $1.48. Fartcoin defying all odds, right? Hot air always rises. And I guess that's why it's going up until it doesn't, right? All right, let's see. What else, guys? Let me know in the comments. What else? Theta, has it bottomed? Look, I imagine this chart doesn't look good, but let's have a look. Let's see. All right. It's making new lows right now, at least cycle lows. Has it bottomed in the sense of it hasn't taken out this low at 56? But yeah, Theta looking brutal, absolutely brutal. I think you need to go on a bit of a lower time frame, something like this. Theory works the same way, right? Reclaim the Monday low. Good thing about that is if you did reclaim the Monday low, simultaneously you might be recapturing some of this trading range, right? So I think if you can do that and start to see something like this, a little bit of a move up over here on Theta, get back above this breakdown level, which is inside the Monday range, then you can start to look for a quick trade opportunity. But this has got a lot of work to do longer term. This is a powerful downtrend. So it's getting absolutely brutalized over here. All right, cool. What else, guys? We did a lot of requests yesterday as well. You can go back to yesterday's show if you do want to see more of those. Let's see, is anything sticking out over here? Anything interesting that looks good? Let me just scroll through the list very, very quickly. What was that? 13%. FTT, can you believe it? Look how illiquid that is. I'm actually just going to delete this. Why do I even have that on this list? What else? What else have we got over here? It's very choppy. It's still clearly a rotational game, right? Everything is moving all about, changing hands often. A lot of people are uncertain about which way things are going to go. But bulls do really have a chance over here, right? They have a chance to shift the trend. We need to see some clearance into this 90K region, holding multiple candles there, closing multiple candles there. And then you can start to say that most likely the bottom is in, and you want to buy that next pullback, which should print that inverse head and shoulders on the daily time frames. And that's going to be across most coins, right? So we can have a look over here. Let's go to a couple of coins. What does ETH look like on the daily? Actually, this one doesn't have a chance of putting in an inverse head and shoulders. It's been brutal on ETH, poor ETH. People are capitulating on that, right? But if you look over here on, for example, Solana, left shoulder, potential head, so if you do come deviate back below into the previous month's low, that's where you're looking at your right shoulder. You can have a look at Sui. Okay, Sui, kind of similar, left shoulder, potential head over here, needs to run up a bit higher, pull back down into the previous month's low, possibility of a right shoulder, right? So we'll cross that road when it comes. That road only probably comes some point in May, just to give you guys an idea, right? How's AVAX? Similar, right? Left shoulder, this one's not as clean, but possibility for right shoulder over there. You can call that a head. It's not too bad. What else? What else have we got? Hype. So hype approaching this level, right? That's going to be an interesting level. Let me go back to hype. We lost over there. So if you do get the rejection, that's what I'd outlined over here, price to move up. If you get that rejection on hype and it comes down, then you're looking for your right shoulder to form somewhere around there. Same story, around the previous month's low, right? You might come back down into those key zones. There's some untested liquidity based on the big candles that occurred around there, but coming into that resistance zone, which is pretty much right here, 19, 20, somewhere within that region. Cool. If it breaks this trend line, yeah, then maybe this thing is going to squeeze much, much harder. But this is a big order block that led to the breakdown on hype. So there's going to be quite a lot of work to do initially for bulls to get above that. I don't think that they get it right on the first try necessarily. All right. Let's see. XRP. XRP looking a bit flat lately, right? Just holding up over here. It's just chopping about. I prefer to take these trades at the extremity, so there's not much that I can really say over here, but similar to the rest of the coins, if it does run up based on the drawing that I've put in place over here, then also left shoulder, head, and somewhere down here, let's make it a bit cleaner, left shoulder, head, and if you push up over here, reject, come back down, right shoulder, right? Then you're looking to squeeze down back towards that wick that is in your golden pocket at 1.79 is the price. Alrighty, cool. Let's see, is there anything else? What else, guys? I know you have a lot of different requests over here. I do want to remind you, for those of you that want the requests, you can always come through to this section in Whale Room. I know a lot of you are already in Whale Room. Click there and ask the team, right? You can tag us over here, come and ask us questions. If you do want any of the coaches to assist you over there, we do have a lot of different coaches that are trading the markets on the regular. You got Josh, Chris, Farouk, and then also we have traditional markets. Don't forget that, right? If you're into traditional markets, here it is. Here's the Vantage Markets trades that we've been taking. These are traditional market trades. By the way, all of you can get into this section for free, right? The Vantage Market section for free, but you have to join Whale School. In order to get in there for free, you actually have to join Whale School. The links are below. We begin in 6 days' time. 6 days to go. Alrighty, so that's it from me, folks. Let's see how the rest of today goes. Thank you all so much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next one. Have a good day, and cheers for now.